Hi students, so today we're going to create the game, the one that appears when you don't have internet in Google Chrome where the dinosaur is jumping over things. But we're going to make it with a twist where it is going to be a Yeti. So let's do that. I have some art pieces that I made and you can also find them. So let's create a new folder and I'm going to call it Yeti just to put all the art pieces in it. And I have these 4 art pieces, 2 pictures of Yeti, mountains or 3 different mountains to have 3 different hardness level, and the ground. So to start, let's select them all by holding shift and highlight all of them. Let's change to point no filter and then make sure that it's 32 pixel because that's the image dimension I believe. Let's double check, it's actually 35 pixels, so I'm going to put it as 36 because that's the canvas I drew the art on. And then I will hit apply, and all of them are going to be, and you can see they are big enough that you can see them on the screen nicely. If it's too small for you, you can change the dimension, which actually let's just go ahead and make them 16. Let's make it a tiny bit bigger so we can see it better. Yeah, that's actually better. Let's keep it at 16. Yeah, I like 16. Alright, so this is our Yeti character and we have 2 of them and then we have 3 mountains. So let's start by creating our tile map for the ground, and it will be a static tile map so we're not going to be messing with it too much. So right click to the object, tile map, rectangle, and I'm just going to call it ground, and I will actually even go ahead and give it the tag ground. Well, we're going to have a tag. Let's create a new tag and I'm going to call it ground. Alright, so this tile map we need to add tile art, so we go to Windows and then I will go to my 2D tile palette and I will create a new tile palette by clicking on create new tile palette, and I'm just going to call it ground. It's going to be the only thing we're using tile for. We're not going to use tiles again, and I'm just going to save it in the Yeti folder. I'll just create a tile folder and start that by just starting tile and then selecting folder. Well, I guess I have to just pick it. Or you know what, we're just going to pick the Yeti folder as our tile folder, and I will drag my ground and save it as ground asset. Alright, and then I will take my brush tool and select the ground, and I will go ahead and just making sure actually I'm gonna, yeah, let's just make sure. It's a little bit hard to see because of the color. Alright, and I'm just going to paint it down here just like that, where if you want you can see it. And just to make it more obvious, let's just go to the camera setting real quick. I'm gonna close the tile map, that's all we need, and I'm gonna change it to white color, so now you can easily see the tiles. And as you can see, they are overlapping a little bit weirdly, but for today's purposes we don't need to worry about that. The reason it's overlapping a little bit weirdly is because the tiles are bigger than the square shapes, which you can adjust that by adjusting the cell size. You can fix the, not the tile anchor, the cell size. I think it's going to be from the grid. Yes, cell size. We can increase the x-axis and that would stretch it out and it would make it look a little nicer. So now it looks actually better. So if I want to, I think it's 4 times almost. Okay, 3 times is too many. Let's put it to 3. Yep, 3 sounds good, and then we just need to put it on the last box because I forgot. So again, 2D tile palette, I'm going to select my tile and make sure I brush everyone, and now it looks better. So that's my ground, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the Yeti. So go ahead and close that. Just making sure I'm still recording. Alright, so pick any one of those Yetis. I'm going to use the first Yeti, and this is my Yeti. And just before and then After you add your Yeti, we're going to give it animation so it looks like it's running. I made the liberty of making the foot look like this swirly thing just to save some time. And then I'm going to go to animation window, windows, animation window, and I will create a new animation and I will call it Yeti. And I will select my Yeti and then add property and then actually sprite renderer. Drag your Yeti sprite and then drag your second Yeti sprite and just space them out a little bit. So let's look at it. That's too fast, maybe space them out a little bit like that. Okay, so that's too slow. So maybe this way, and then I'm just gonna drag the second Yeti a little bit. Yay, and then the first Yeti. So what I did is I put the same Yeti twice, so it's gonna go like this. So this looks a little better. I might actually space it out a little bit like that. It's actually much better. It looks like the Yeti is running if we went here. And when everything is moving, it will look much better. Alright, so that's a simple animation. And just to clarify what I did, if that was confusing, I dragged the Yeti and I dropped it here, and then dragged it again, dropped it roughly here, and then dragged my second Yeti, dropped it here, and dragged my second Yeti again and dropped it here. That's all I did. Alright. So now I have my Yeti with animation and I have my ground, and then finally these are my mountains, right? So the whole idea are the mountains are going to be here and you have to jump over them so they don't hit you and you lose. So that's the whole concept. So let's start with the easiest part, which would be the Yeti animation. And all the animation the Yeti need to do is jumping. It's not going to do more than jumping. So let's go ahead and right click, create C# script, and I'm going to call it movement. And it's going to be very, very simple. And here's the deal. You can use the rigid body like we usually do, or you can just change the position to go up certain height and then drop. But to just save time, I'm going to use the rigid body. So I will say RB, just ignore this, RB, and actually rigid body 2D, and then I'm going to call it RB. Make sure it's public rigid body 2D, and then just calling it RB. And here's the deal, you don't have to remember the spelling of them. If you ever spelled it wrong, just Google it and you will get the right spelling. So rigid body 2D, and then we will call it RB, and then in the update function we will say if inputs dot button down, and then I will say jump, which is our jump button, which in our case is space, and I can double check that I did it correctly. I spelled button down wrong. Let's get button down and then jump, or which is this one, we can say input get button down fire 1, and again fire 1 is just the mouse click. Then we want our action to happen, which will be rb dot velocity. First I'm going to make the velocity equal to 0, just like we did for the other game. So if you're going up and down, it doesn't affect. Actually, we don't need to do that because you're not going to be able to jump unless you're touching the ground. So let's just keep it this way: RB velocity, and then we will do I think it's the vector to dot up. But we need to add force. Add force, and the force will be vector 2 up, and then the type of force would be an impulse force. Select the force impulse. We don't really need to do we can just do RB dot add force to that. So let's test it and see if we actually did it right. I'm honestly not sure this time. So apparently I have a mistake in my code. Input does not exist. I just need to capitalize my eyes for input. And then rigid body does not contain the definition add force. So what am I doing wrong? Let's see. I think I spelled it wrong. Add force capital F. Let's try now. Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to drag it to the Yeti, and if I did it correctly, I have to add a rigid body to the Yeti, rigid body 2D, and I'm going to drag it to the Yeti. And actually there is one more thing we forgot to do, is we need to multiply the up with the amount of thrust that we need to use, thrust. So I'm going to add another public float, and I'm going to call it thrust. It's like how much power we're going to put. And because if we didn't, then it's just going to add 1, and 1 is barely enough. So let's do 10 and see how that would work. Okay, he's jumping. Alright, perfect. But now we just need to make it jump only if it's touching the ground and not be able to jump if it's not touching the ground. So let's add another variable. I'm going to make it public just so we can see it. And this one will be a boolean. And then it will be is ground. And if it's true, then the action will happen. So it would say if the buttons are clicked, then that. So now I'm going to add another nested if statement, where you add an if statement inside an if statement. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to make it easily readable, and I don't want it to be too long of a statement. So if grounded or is grounded equal true. And by the way, you don't even need to write equal true. You don't have to do that. You can just write is grounded and it's automatically assumed. Then we're going to be able to jump. And when is grounded going to be true is if we're touching the ground. So we can add our what do you call it, collision detector. So we can say we can use on collision enter. And while I'm getting it going, I'm actually looking at the Unity documentation to get those information. So you don't have to write everything yourself, you can always refer to the documentation. So make sure you're out of the void update. So I'm all the way down here. I only have one more bracket, and I will do void on collision enter 2D collision call and then open bracket, and if this happened, then if call dot you want to check the kind of object we're interacting with. Tag if the collision dot game object, I think I need to spell game object, the tag is ground, then we want to use grounded equal true. Okay, true with a small t. So we say if we collide with an object and this object is ground, then is grounded true. And then if it's not a ground, then it's basically false, but we don't have to write that. That automatically is the case. And then here we will add an else statement later. And here, as soon as we are not grounded, and as soon as we are grounded, then this one will go to false. So it doesn't allow us to double jump. That's just alright. So now we're gonna check. So we have the ground, it has a tag ground, and now let's test it and see. We have a problem. The problem is GameObject.tag. Is the tag capital T? No, I think the tag is a small t and the game is a capital G. Let's see. That's so wrong. So let's check it on the documentation and see what the documentation will tell us. Okay, I did write it wrong, so what I need to do is equal. So this is how it needed to be. And the G in game object is just a small g. So that's how it should look like. Alright, perfect. So now if I played my game, I can see that we went through because we didn't add a collider in our ground. So we will pick our ground, and this time we're going to add a tile map collider 2D. And let's run it now and see. Alright, I'm still going through it. Oh, yep, because we didn't add a collider to our Yeti, so I'm going to add a collider to my Yeti. And I'm going to use the cap. Actually, let's try the polygon collider and see how well. See, it doesn't draw it that well, so what I'm going to use instead, I'm going to use the capsule collider, and then just make sure the capsule is the slightest thinner. The height is okay. I'm just going to make it the slightest thinner, and I'm going to offset it a little bit this way, just so we don't accidentally touch the objects and make it hard for the players. This is just an adjustment, you don't have to do that. And we can see it only jumps when we're touching the ground, which we want. And again, we don't need to move backward and forward because it will be, again, the stuff are going to move toward us. And you can change the gravity scale to 2, for example, just to make the falling a little bit faster and make it feel a little bit more realistic. Alright. That's actually perfect. So now we're done with 50% of the game, and the last piece is we want to make a code that makes the mountain move toward my player, and it's pretty simple actually. We are going to create an empty object, and this one will be our spawner. I'm gonna spell it correctly this time. I'm just gonna give it a color so I know exactly where it is located. Over here, and if you can't see it, it might just be because you don't have the gizmo part on, which you can add it. It's one of these options. Can't really remember on top of my head which one, but one of these options that is probably responsible for the shape not appearing, and sometimes you just have to play it and then pause it and then the shape appear, like in my case. I don't understand why this happens sometimes and why it doesn't, but it is what it is. So I'm gonna put the spawner here. Well, it's a little off screen, and actually let's do this. Let's look at the mountain. The point is up there, so the mountains need to be something like this, and they all are the same height, so we don't have to worry about the height. The width is the only thing we need to worry about. So back to my spawner. I'm just gonna leave it here for now, and we will see what it will do. Alright, we will create a code that will make the mountain spawn and move toward the left, and we can do it all in one code instead of doing it in two codes. Alright, so let's call it obstacle. I'm just gonna call it ops, just for a shortcut, even though it's not the right spelling. Alright, so step number one, we would need to create a group of object, and this group of object will have all the three different mountain styles we have. And I'm just trying to remember how to create a group in Unity, because I can't really remember on top of my head, but it's a very simple code, honestly. I just don't want to do it. Alright, okay, perfect. So just leave the bracket, the place with the bracket, so it will be public game object, and then you open these. When you open these, this tells the game, hey, this upcoming thing is basically a group. So I'm gonna call it game objects, which would be our obstacles, and that's the first thing, and then speed, which will control how fast they move, so we'll make it public float. I'm going to call it speed, and then we will do another public float, and this will be time between them. And do we need anything else? We have the time, we have the speed, and I think that's okay. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to make our code create game object and send them out. And here, one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to change this to fixed update. The reason it's fixed update, it has to deal with time, so it's a fixed amount of time instead of frames, so it doesn't change based on your device. It will be working the same for everyone. Alright, so the first thing, we need to create an object. And this object will be a random object selected from the list of objects, and it's random. Alright, so we will use our instantiate code. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a, let's call it obstacle. So I'm going to call this one a var, which stands for variable obstacle, and it will equal instantiate. And the object we're going to create, see, I basically copied and pasted here this whole thing, and I'm going to just fix it now. So the projectile, instead of calling it projectile, I'm going to put it as game object for now. The transform position will be the same, and the transform rotation will be the same. But we will be changing a few things there in a second, which the first thing we need to change is we don't want the whole list to be generated. We want one random item to be picked from the list. So we're going to basically create a random object generator. So in the fixed updates, because we want it to happen all the time, let's create a random number. So we'll do an integer, and I will call it random selection, and then it will equal to random dot, and I don't need the auto correction this time, random dot. Alright, if yours is doing this, just random dot range, and then the range will start from 0, because in programming languages all my counting start from 0, and then it will end at the length of the game object. So if you added more obstacle, the length will be like, so we have 3 obstacle, so the length of my object is 3, or actually in this case it would be 3. So I want to pick a random number from 0 to the length of my object. It probably has to be the length of my object minus 1, because the length of my object will be 3, that I have 2 indexes. Alright, and then make sure the random is capital R, and then we are going to create a game object. Actually, let's do it this way. Let's call it game object with capital G, and then let's call it just that, and then we will call it selection, and this will be the object we selected, and this object will be basically I will select the list game objects, and then open parentheses and put my random selection number here. Then just make sure this one is a capital, and then object would be a capital O, and then semicolon. So what I did here is I made my computer pick a random number between 0 to the length of the list minus 1, and then I wanted to create the object, and then this selection object will be here, and everything will be the same. And then we want to destroy the object, which will be obstacle in, let's say, 10 seconds. Let's start 10 seconds here. So far we made the list and everything, so we have something here. Game object could not be found in line number 7. Game object, capital O for object. Alright, so let's look at it. So now if I went to my spawner and I dragged the spawner code and I put it there, I would have the option of dragging all my game object to this list, so you can expand the list and add, and I'm going to add 3 elements. So I will put the mountain on the top, on the first element. Alright, so I can't drag them directly because they are not game object, they are technically a sprite, so we would need to first make them into a prefab. So I'm just going to drag all 3 of them and then select them, or actually just after I pull them all, I'm just going to drag them back down, and that will make them into a prefab. And yeah, so we have the prefab. I don't need those anymore, so I can delete them. As you can see, they are prefab because they are blue. And now back to the spawner, and I can drag the prefabs, and that will actually work. Alright, perfect. And just to make sure, yeah, the prefab are all positioned at 0, 0. This is just, I'm just making sure everything is good. And then the speed, it doesn't really matter, and the timer, it doesn't really matter. So I'm not going to make this run too long, because if I did, it's going to crash my game. So I'm going to start it, and I'm going to go back to scene to just see. You can see that all those mountains are appearing, and I have clone 1, clone 2, clone 1, clone 2, and I don't see clone 3. So I think the mistake is here. I guess in C# you don't have to subtract 1, so just keep it without subtracting 1, and that should fix it. So let's actually restart, and I'm going to pause in a second. Alright, yeah, now we have 1, 2, and 3. Alright, perfect. So I know my code is working, so now after I make the object, I want it to move. So let's do that. So I will do. Alright, so now to move the mountain, we need to create another code. And this code will be responsible for moving the mountain, so it will be mount move, just to name it something, and then I'll open it. And here it's going to be very simple. We just need a public float, which will be my speed. And then in here, let's change it to fixed. Just if you call this one fixed, what it does is it counts time instead of multiplying it by delta time. Fixed makes sure it happens in certain amount of time instead of frames, and simply it will be transform the translate, and then we will do vector 3 dot left, and then we will multiply it by the speed. Very simple code. And what's wrong with the code? Let's see. Transform translate required an unstatic field. Let's see, what did we do wrong this time? So one helpful thing is to actually rely on Google Translate. Like for example, this time I forgot that I did not say small t for transform translate. So that's just like one tiny mistake that could take you some time. But relying on AI in these kind of situation is totally acceptable. So then what I would do is I would select every single mountain and I will give it the code, and let's set the speed to 10, for example. And this is the only part that is kind of like repetitive, because if you fix the speed for one of them, you would probably have to do it for the rest. So let's run it and see what happens now. Alright, the mountains appears really fast. So yep. Alright, so what we're going to do next is make sure we do a timer for ourselves. So I'm back at the spawning, the mountain spawning code. So let's create a timer. So I'm going to do another one. This one will be float timer, and it will equal time the delta time. And then we will say if the timer is bigger than time, which would be like the time we will set, then we want this to happen, and basically everything needs to be inside the parentheses. I'm going to close it here, and then we need to set timer to 0. Then after we set timer to 0, we go out again and do timer equal time dot delta time. So it basically resets itself again. Not equal, plus equal time dot delta time. So it will count from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, so I forgot a semicolon at the end here. Now let's see if that actually did anything. Just make sure on the spawn we're going to change the time to 10. Oh, and by the way, this speed on the spawn, just go ahead and delete it. We're never going to use it actually, so might as well get it out of the way. And then let's run the code and see what happens. Alright, so nothing is happening because 10 seconds is very long. I'm going to change it to 1 second. Okay, it is working, but the mountains are flying so fast, so I guess speed 10 for the mountain is also too fast, so I'm going to change it to 1 just to see if I would be able to see them or not. And let's play it again. Alright, even 1 is fast, so simply you would be jumping, but at this rate you're not catching a break. So let's do 0.2, 0.2, and 0.2, and let's see if that would do us any good. Okay, yeah, I forgot. If you exit it again, then let's do it. Alright. Point 2 seems to be better. for the speed, honestly. But timer 1 second is too short. I'm gonna make it into 1.5. Let's see if that would be better. Yeah, I think that's better. And you can see it's actually very smooth. Yeah, I like this. I'm a fan of the speed. I'm a fan of how the Yeti is jumping. Alright, so now if you hit the mountain, nothing happens, so we need to fix that. We need to add a collider to all those mountains. So let's go and add a component, and let's just click on the mountain and see. I'm gonna start with the polygon collider, and let's see how that will look like. See, again, this collider is not good because all these gaps, like what if I didn't touch them? So what I would do, just like we did last time, I would add an edge collider, and then I would fix it to match my point. So make sure you're holding this tool. I'm gonna put this edge here. Yay for the mountain. Yay for the bottom again. Top, bottom. This is at the very bottom. It doesn't have to be perfect again. Like the more forgiveness you give your player, the better, technically speaking. Alright, that's for mountain number 3. And let's just give them a tag. Let's create a tag and call them death. I'm gonna create a tag called death, and I will make sure I give them all the tag death. Alright, so that's mountain 2. Let's go to mountain 2. That was mountain 3. Edge collider again. Same thing. Select this tool up here and add the point and drag the mountain collider or the edge collider to the edges of your interest. And then make sure the tag there. Same thing for the first mountain. Edge collider. This one should be the easiest. One in the middle, and then the sides, and again there for the tag. Alright, so now all my mountains should have a collider, so if we start playing and the mountain actually hits me, and I actually hit the mountain, boom, I'm flying with the mountain. Alright, so that's what we wanted to see. Alright, so now we are just gonna make the code that will make the game reset when we hit the collider. So in the same movement speed code for the player, we're just gonna add here, and we'll say else. Else simply mean if anything else other tagged anything literally beside ground, then we want the game to stop. So we can do time dot it was active. No, time dot scale, and we would scale it to 0. I want to say scale was a capital S. Let's see. Looks like it. No. Scale is small s. No, was it time scale? Maybe time scale. Maybe capital T. Let's see. We'll find out soon. Now let's see if it's actually a 1 or 2 word. Let's Google it. So time scale unity. Let's see. I was kinda right. So let's just make sure we do it the right way. And it might be actually equal. Let's check that. Yeah, it's an equal sign. Alright, so we need to fix this. See, and this is the thing with game design. You don't have to be very familiar with the language as long as you understand the concept. You would always be able to make your way through. Alright, so let's play it. And boom, game freezes, perfect, everything is working the way it is intended to be. So now let's just add a counter that will give us a point every time we bypass a mountain, and we will be done. So to do that, let's go back to the mountains prefab, so double click on it and create an empty object, And this time the empty object is going to be named, well, it doesn't really matter what you name it. I'm just gonna name it to rename it and call it point. And then I am going to uh, add in a box collider actually. Box collider 2D. Make sure it is above the mountain actually, so let's make sure we can select the point, move it above the mountain, and I'm just going to change the edge and make it thinner and taller. And I actually want to move it a little bit, so I'm just going to make it in the middle, just like that. And then honestly, you can just copy the same one by holding Ctrl C, go to the second mountain, Ctrl V, and it will position it in the correct place. Same thing for the first mountain, Ctrl V, and it will be positioned in the same place. And I think it's high enough where there is no way you're going to jump over it. And let's make sure we give it a tag of, let's create a new tag and call it point. And then let's go back and give this one the tag point. And let's do it for all of the rest of them. So mountain 2, make sure you select point and the tag will be point. Mountain 3, select point and the tag will be point. Alright, so now we need to actually modify our code one more time. So back to the movement script. This time, instead of saying on point collider, actually one more thing we need to do. This collider on the point, let's make it a trigger. So make sure you do it for all of them. The collider on the point, make it into a trigger, because if it's not a trigger, you're not going to be able to go through it and make it a trigger. Alright, so now we will do another one. And this is my movement script. Void on trigger, enter 2D, collider other, and then I would say if other.gameObject.tag, and then here where you open the parentheses, that's the difference between this one and the other one. Is it if other dot? I think it's if other.tag. You'll probably remember it from that and from the previous lesson. And then we'll say if we collided with something that has tag, score will be plus plus, which means add 1 point to the score. So we need to go up here. Let's make it public integer and call it score and semicolon. Actually, let's start at 0 with the score, and then every time you gather the point, the score goes up. Alright, perfect. So let's see if that actually works now by just playing the game and see. So we have an error. I forgot to semicolon at the end. So let's actually run it and see. Something needed. Oh, we have to say private or public. No, we shouldn't. This one is on line 42. Oh, you can say void, okay. Private void. Perfect. Let's run it again. We have score does not exist. Score. Did I spell score wrong? Yeah, I spelled score wrong. Alright. Alright, I think we did this is wrong. So let's check what I did wrong by copying it and then just posting it on Google. Honestly, that would the basic stuff on this. Alright. That's that. Alright, so now it should work, and let's see if there's any point. I'm gonna make sure I pick the Yeti. Alright, as we can see, the score went to up as soon as I jumped over the first mountain, so we know it works. Perfect. Alright, so now again, just like the other game, we're gonna create a canvas, put the score up so everyone can see the score. Alright, so let's create the canvas. So I will go to UI and then I will go to Text Mesh Pro, and again import it if you didn't before. And then we're going to close. Select your canvas, overlay it on the camera, and then make sure you take your camera and drop it there, and that will match it pretty nicely. I'm going to drag my text, put it up here. I will start it with 0, and I'm going to call it score screen, just so it's different. And then this is just to make it look nicer. I'm going to center it. I'm going to make it bigger. And then I'm going to select the Yeti font, if you remember it from the Flippy Yeti. I'm just going to drag the font, put it down there, and then I will do what I did last time, right click, create, and then I will make sure that I go to Text Mesh Pro, font asset, and that will make the font asset for me. And then I can go back to here, change it to the eyes, and we can see that nice Yeti looking font. Let's see if I can make it. No, not this one. Let's go to the 3. Oh, the font is white. That why it's not visible. Let's make it the same color as the Yeti. Perfect. Looks good to me. Alright, maybe a little bit bigger, like 100 maybe. Yep, that's actually better. Nice. So we have the font and everything. So now again back to my player, and I'm gonna add another thing, which would be we need to add the special character for the Text Mesh Pro. So I'm just gonna go to Google and literally add Text Mesh Pro, and then it will take me to the documentation for Text Mesh Pro. This documentation looks a little bit different, so you would need to navigate through it a little bit, and then we need to go to the font asset maybe. No, style sheet. No, setting maybe. Start with setting. Let's see, let's go back to Google again one more time. Quick start, I know it's over here in this quick tutorial. So we need to import, so I will say using TM Pro. Is it capital P for Pro? Yeah, capital P, TM Pro. And then here we will do public TM Z underscore text, TMP underscore text, TMP underscore text, and then let's call it score screen, just to be consistent. Score screen. And then here, after we add the plus plus, what we want to do in the update, we always want to be updating. So we will say score screen. Actually, we will take our score. We will say score screen dot text equal my score dot to string. Dot to string. That should update it every time we gain the point. So let's check that out. Run out. Alright, forgot semicolon somewhere. Where did I forget the semicolon? I forgot it in here. Alright, so just clear that error. And then now let's go to the Yeti, drag this one and put it there, and let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. And we can also, if you want to play with the time a little bit where it's not always perfectly timed, you can create some form of a function, which let's do that, why not? So let's go to the obstacle code, and here instead of having time, let's say max, time max, and then just copy it again and call it min. Max and time min, and then in here we will add something that will pick a random number. So we will say int Actually, let's do float time, which we're referring to this one. It will equal to random dot range time min to my time max. So it will pick a random value. So we know that 1.5 second was a good time. So let's go back to our spawner. So I'm gonna say 1 point maybe 2 to 1.7. Let's see how that would go. So this would guarantee you that it's not always spaced the same. So it would bring you a little bit of a challenge of how far apart they are. So you're not always just jumping exactly the same way. So it's a small gap of time, but you can play with that to where you're comfortable. You can change the speed and all those things. This is basically perfect, and now we just need to add two more things. Thing number one, a screen that asks you do you want to play or not, and then another screen that when you die you have to fly, so replay. So again on my canvas, let's do it this way. Let's create inside my canvas, we're going to go to UI, and this time let's create a panel. And just like last time, the panel is totally up to you, the whole thing, which, actually, let's see. No, I actually don't want to use a panel this time. Let's actually just right click and let's create a button. So UI, and let's make a button, text match button, and this button will be start, and this will be start the game. So on here, on the button itself, let's change the text by clicking here on the switch condition start, and then this whole button job will be to change the time from nothing to something. So how can we do that? Basically, the time scale will be 0, and then when you press the button will disappear, and the time scale will change to 1. So let's create a new script and call it play button. Alright, and this one would be very simple. So in here we would go ahead and say that time scale equals 0. That's the default. And then in the update we will say if actually, instead of doing that, let's do this. Let's create a public void. Let's do public void, and this public void will be start game. And then in this public void, if you clicked it, two things are going to happen. One, the time scale will equal to 1. And then the second thing is we are going to change the scene manager. So we actually need to import the scene manager using Unity engine.scene. Spell it, so there you go, Google Unity Scene Manager. Alright, so we want to start the scene, so get active scene, I think that's, or load scene. Let's just use get active scene. So what we need to do is this, we need to do this line of code. So, and then, honestly, we can't just copy this one because this is the exact one we want to do. So, we will do scene manager dot get active scene. Alright, perfect. So, that basically is going to restart the scene for us. Let's double check we didn't do anything wrong. Does not sound like we did. Wow, I am surprised. So, in the button itself, I'm just gonna drag the play button code, and then up here in the action, I'm going to drag the play button and put it there. The function, I would select play button, and then I will find my new function, which is called start game. So if I did this correctly, oh, actually wait, we don't need this here, my bad. We just need to scene active, and then we need to use the UI tool. So we would say Unity Engine UI, Unity Engine dot UI, UI. Actually, we don't need any of that, my bad. I don't know what I'm saying. Active, what is it? Is it set active or object active? Let me double check. Set object active. Unity. It's game object set active. Alright, perfect. We just need to copy that. We're going to say game object set active, and then repeat false if it is whenever we click on the button, because we don't want the button to appear anymore. So if everything is correct, we should hit play, and we have something wrong. False, spelled false wrong. Alright, there you go. And that's clear. I guess game object need to start with a small g in this case. Alright, perfect. So now whenever we start, it's going to be like this. And then you have to hit start, and the game will start. Perfect. Alright, so now let's just go ahead and make our button look pretty by changing the font first to my icy font, and to make it all icy, I'm just going to make it all in caps, and then I'm going to make the font huge like this, and the button, let's make it a little bigger. Let's see. The button is a little bit too buttony, I guess. I don't really know what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say it's like, it looks like a button. It doesn't look like, you know what I mean, maybe you don't. But I don't want it to look like a button, so let's go ahead and change the image. Here, the sprite, the UI sprite for the button. Let's go ahead and select something flat. And again, this is just personal preference by all means. You do not have to do this. And that's better. Not that's actually not better. That's actually worse. Let's see, what would that do? That actually made it, to me it looks a little bit better, but it's not what I was going for. So I'm gonna just go back to how it used to be, which is very buttony, and then let's see if we can add a material, like a flat white. Maybe we need to do anything. Alright, colors. Let's change the color. Or should we just be content and not militant? Nope, that doesn't really make any difference. You know what, I'll be content with this button. It's not that bad. Yeah, click the button, the game starts, and you can start the game. Alright, perfect. Yeah, the only thing I'm going to change is actually the font color, just to match the whole scheme of the game. And again, these are just optional. They don't change the game, the colors and things like this, just what you prefer. Alright, and then I'm going to duplicate this one by Control D to duplicate, select it and hit Control D. I will rename it to Restart, and after I name it Restart, I will change the text here as well, and I'm going to say replay, maybe just replay or restart maybe, and then just make the font tiny bit smaller so it fits, so we can see. Probably a little bit even smaller like this, so it just fits nicely there. Okay, and the restart button would have the same exact stuff as this button, and the only difference here is instead of having start game, I'm going to make another code inside, and this I'm going to call it restart game. Restart game. And this time the scale will be 1, and then the it will be off. It will be false. It's not going to be active as well. And then we will add one more thing here actually, which I meant to add it earlier. So Unity dot scene manager. So we actually need to add it now. So I'm just going to go back to where was the scene manager situation? It's here. Scene manager. So I'm just going to add the scene manager, and then I will say scene manager dot get active scene here, and that should actually just make the whole thing work correctly. And what this will do is I will basically, after the game ends, the button should appear, and then if we clicked on the button, the game will start running again, and then it will be like, hey, basically the whole thing will restart. Let's see if that would actually work. We have something wrong. So I think I'm using this the wrong way. It's a load scene. And I think you can select the exact same one. Basically, it's the same code we did for the Flappy Bird. Just trying to see if there is one that make you load the same scene you're in right now. ChatGPT was saying. It just say do okay, well, it just so it did exactly what I was planning on doing, but yeah, never mind. Alright, perfect. So we're just gonna say scene dot load scene, and then we'll see scene manager active scene, blah blah blah. Alright, so it's not gonna work perfectly because there is one thing we didn't do, which is hide the restart button. So start, and then if we died, the restart button is not going to appear. So we need to make the restart button hidden at the beginning. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that, but this time we can just say game object set active, not appearing. So we will need to add variable. So we will say restart. Actually, we need to say game object, and then we're going to call it restart, and then in the start we will say restart dot set active false, which means we don't want it to be appearing at the beginning, and then on here everything should work fine from there. So let's see, and then the restart button, if we clicked on it, it's instead of that it will actually bring the restart game code. So the restart button is going to activate this code, the start button is going to activate this code. Alright, so Now we want to say, hey, if I died, I want the scene to basically restart. So in the active, I will just put an statement if time scale equal to 0, what I want to happen, I want the restart button to be activated. So every time my game freezes, the restart button is gonna pop up. So let's see if that actually gonna make it work. So I'm gonna make the restart button, I will select it and deactivate it. And let's start the game. We forgot a semicolon. Where did we miss our semicolon this time? We forgot to put a parentheses around the if statement. That way. Alright. Alright, so let's start the game and see what happens. So to give us start game. Alright, I'm getting some points. And then boom. Nothing happened. Let's see why is that the case. Time scale equal to 0. Maybe because it is equal to 0, that's why it doesn't show up. Let's say if it is equal to 1, that's just for the sake of it and see what would happen in that case. I know the problem. See, the problem is because those two are not activated, the code technically is not active. So we can't really use it here. So we have to use it somewhere else. So the best place to use it, let's just put it in the movement script. Why not? It's already busy, right? So in the movement script, what I did is just go ahead and copy this code from the update, the one we just wrote. Go to the movement script, paste it on the update in the movement script. And then as well, go up here. Go to the restart, game object restart, copy it as well, Control X to cut it and paste it, go up here and paste it in the movement script again, and just make sure it's public game object. Actually, and you know what I just realized? I realized that it didn't, yeah, it wouldn't work anyway, but yeah, make sure it's public game object restart. I realized it didn't actually attach anything to it, but yeah, it actually would not change anything, so let's make sure that we are doing everything else correctly. What does it say? Oh, this one. That. Alright. Okay. That actually didn't do it. Yeah, what else I did here is on the void start restart was there. I just deleted it because we don't need it there as well. So simply we did it there. So let's go to the Yeti and let's add the restart button to the Yeti. The Yeti is kind of busy at this point. Alright, so now everything I think would work perfectly. Alright, so we have a problem there. The problem is that if time scale equals 0, not 1, we need to make sure that's, I didn't want to test it. Alright, so now if I press, alright, so that doesn't work. So instead of having this here, let's do this. Let's just go on the collider. If the time equals 0, simply if we collided with something that is not ground, restart would be activated. Boom. Problem solved. $1 million question. Alright. Campus. Restart. Off. And let's start and see what happens. Start the game. Perfect. And then if I hit it, boom, restart. And then it allows me to start the game again. protect the game. He's working fine. That's actually good. And you can jump with the space bar. Start the game. And we can see the score. Alright, this is a whole game. Good job everyone for completing it or getting this far. Well, next time we're gonna make a different game.